Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of A Dragon Ball Conversation. So today, after the success of the first episode with Geekdom 101, I decided to branch out and talk to some more of the Dragon Ball YouTubers out there. And for this very special topic, I thought I'd bring one of the up-and-coming talents of the Dragon Ball community on YouTube. I'd just like to introduce the wonderful MozillaVulpix. So, say hi.
Hello everyone. Thanks for having me on this channel, Masako. It's kind of a big difference here in terms of popularity, so I really appreciate it.
Hey, well, I had to start somewhere too, and you know, you never know when these things happen. When I was back doing these in October, I did the first discussion about what was now become Super Saiyan Rage with Trunks is just on a whim. Like, I had to say something. Then that whole Super Saiyan 3 is dumb video, and that was like, oh boy, okay, that's when it started happening. So it can happen at any moment. So you just gotta keep going, produce good content. And what do you do on your channel?
I mean, my channel's kind of a bit of a mixed bag of random sort of, most of the time Dragon Ball. Or also sometimes I do things like reactions to Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and that's something I think a lot of people know me for nowadays. But I also actually do weekly Dragon Ball Super reviews similar to Masako, although mine are maybe a little bit less comedic, a bit more kind of analytical. And sometimes I'll talk about Dragon Ball Super, just everything in the franchise, whatever is on my mind, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's what we hope to achieve here. And what we hope to achieve today is talking about, and especially after the latest episode of Super, so spoilers by the way, talking about Gohan in Dragon Ball. And I know that this is a topic that's very close to heart, that's why I brought you on here.
Oh yeah, Gohan is my favorite character, for those of you who don't know. I've talked about him a lot, let's just say it that way.
Now, to be fair, I've always been a fan of Gohan as well, you know, especially voicing the character in DBZA for the longest time. The basic idea of today's video, we're just going to talk about Gohan and his character. What's he like as a person? How did he make us feel as a person in Dragon Ball? And then moving on to, does he have a place in Super? Which we think that, you know, it has been up and down, and I imagine that anyone who's liked Gohan has felt the same way in terms of confusion, and where ultimately his character will end up, and what will be his end game in Super. But before we get to Super, we actually have to go all the way back to the beginning of Z, and the origins of Gohan, and it's a very interesting concept, really, and it all stems back to when Goku became an adult in Dragon Ball. And I think Gavik here can attest that it was a very, very tumultuous time. And nowadays there are time skips and characters grow up, and that is pretty routine these days in Fairy Tail and One Piece. But back in the day, it was far less common. And it caused a bit of a stink when Goku became an adult, didn't it?
Yeah, so it was something that Akira Toriyama definitely, he said this in sort of interviews. You could find translations around this on the web. He said that he wanted Goku to grow up, like not really because he just wanted the story to move forward, mostly just because he needed to have Goku to have more realistic proportions so he could go and draw more epic fights. It would just make more sense then. And he's like, for that to happen, Goku needs to grow up. His editorial stuff were kind of like, oh, but don't change the formula. It's been working for so long. But Toriyama's like, nah, that's my ultimatum. If Goku doesn't get to grow up, I'm not going to do it. And they let him do it. So I think it worked for the best, considering that everyone's familiar with him now. But
yeah, no, absolutely, and I just love it. It is pure Toriyama, because if he doesn't like drawing something, he will moan about it. He will. He'll be just like, oh, I've got to draw it like that. Oh, can I just change something? That's why Super Saiyan was a thing, because you needed to. It meant that he and his assistant didn't have to ink the hair, so it saved time.
That's one of my favorite fun facts about the entire story. It's like one of the most iconic things in like all of the genre. It was basically just created to save time.
It was a time saver, and yet it's one of the most iconic transformations in all of anime. And you just think that is priceless. That is amazing. But going from that it kind of just gave an idea that these kind of things were unusual, a character growing up. And what would be even more unusual is for a character to have a child in the same manga. And actually, when you look back in the day, Dragon Ball didn't become Dragon Ball Z at the time. It was still part of Dragon Ball, just as the name. It became, known as Z later on, and in later translations, and especially we now know it as Z. But at the time, it was just another Dragon Ball chapter. You kind of moved from one week, you had Goku and Chi-Chi getting married, and then the next week, Goku and Chi-Chi had a kid.
Oh yeah, definitely. We just kind of got registered with the fact that Goku was going to have a wife in the first place. He got proposed to Chi-Chi, and then next chapter, I think, after the tournament finishes, I think the next chapter is just Raditz shows up. Chapter after that, Gohan's just there. It's like 2 weeks. Suddenly he's like, gets married, then he has a kid, and he has a kid, and the kid is a character. And the kid is also a character, despite being Goku's kid, is also not really that much like Goku personality-wise as well, which is something that doesn't normally happen in anime, I feel like. A lot of anime use this kind of common trope that, when the protagonist has the kid is, like, very similar to the protagonist, but Gohan wasn't really like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's the classic Naruto-Boruto. That Boruto just seems like exactly the same. Yeah, back to Z and Gohan. I think it'd be quite safe to say that Dragon Ball Z was originally meant to be about many things, in particular Gohan's rites of passage and the passing of the torch, as well as expanding the story into space.
See, I mean, I don't actually agree with the people who say that Dragon Ball, like the Z portion of the story, was always supposed to be Gohan was going to, like, become the hero and that was always going to happen. But at the very least, I definitely appreciate Gohan's development, his character development is a very important subplot in that area of the story. It's kind of a very big sort of underlying thing. It's sort of always sort of there, even if it's very minor. Gohan is always kind of growing up and doing things and getting stronger. And obviously it does culminate, and then after that, it kind of keeps going for some reason, but it is a very important thing, and Gohan is a very important character, just as important as Vegeta, and sometimes, in some cases, I'd say even more so.
It's kind of one of the more significant subplots, but obviously the main one is like, hey, Goku, you know that Goku character you liked? We could do the ultimate change. He's an alien now. So that explains everything about his tale and his character and everything like that. They were starting to moot the idea that Goku might not be from this planet towards the end of the original Dragon Ball part. And then when it came into the Z part, that's pretty much when it was confirmed, and we then went into space and had the whole idea of the Saiyans. And as well as that, we got introduced to Gohan, and he was an innocent child, and for the longest time, he was a reluctant fighter. He was kind of badgered by his father, who just assumed that, oh, any child of mine will want to fight, right? Right?
I think it's not just that Gohan was sort of a reluctant fighter, it's that, like, his very temperament was not really one who was suited to fighting in the same vein as Goku. From the first, I think, like, the second chapter, the chapter after we meet him, and in the first episode in the anime, Gohan says, like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a scholar. And that is, like, a complete shock because, being a scholar is perhaps the furthest removed you'd expect Gohan to be from, like, something to do with what Goku does all his life. So it is very interesting that that is kind of his character. And despite that, he still ends up being in these fights. And I think it still actually almost made sense as to how he got involved. He's like both a fighter and not a fighter at the same time. I do find it very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he is the true example of a hybrid, and especially due to his bloodline, that he is half Saiyan, and this was the first example of, obviously when we found out about the Saiyans, of a half Saiyan, and it was of great curiosity to both Vegeta and Raditz at the time. And to this day, Vegeta still thinks that Gohan could be the strongest of them all if he actually applied himself, in fighting, but that's just not in Gohan's nature. And it's been one of the main themes of his character ever since. This was the first time, and for the longest time, Gohan was the only half Saiyan until Trunks rocked up.
And honestly, even then, even after Trunks arrives, Gohan's still kind of singled out in his own sort of unique way.
Oh, yes.
I mean, after all, Future Trunks was a character throughout all of the Cell Saga, but Future Trunks doesn't end up with defeating Cell and getting Super Saiyan 2. In fact, there's no implication that he could even do that. It was Gohan who was, in fact, even younger than Future Trunks was.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. No, it's just that the whole idea, though, of that there were other half Saiyans and that Vegeta had a kid, ultimately, was just like, whoa. And then with Bulma, you just go, whoa! That was unexpected. That caused a bit of a shock of itself. But you're right.
Turned into a Super Saiyan and killed Frieza in one blow.
That's great. But it's just... It was the whole idea, as you say, that ultimately the whole half Saiyan thing was kind of led by Gohan for the longest time. The whole kind of mishmash of personalities, I feel that Gohan's Saiyan traits were just bubbling underneath the surface, and it became one of his characteristics with his trademark rage boosts, which I feel reduced in the fullness of time. And now that he's in his 20s, he really doesn't get that angry anymore, or it takes up way more for him to actually, go into one of his rage fits.
Honestly, the reason why I feel like Gohan doesn't really get as many rage boosts nowadays is, well, actually, there's kind of like two reasons. I mean, for one, yes, he's sort of mellowed out a bit, so that there's a lot more you have to do to get him to get angry. And the other thing I feel like the way that I've always seen Gohan's rage boost is like the way you kind of present it. Like it's not really as important as why Gohan gets rage boosts as it is if anyone was going to get rage boosts, why would it be Gohan? Like there's this kind of idea. I think that there's a term that TV Tropes has for it, and it's called beware the nice ones. And what it essentially is the idea that, if a villain can do anything terrible, but if they do something so horrible that they manage to piss off, like not just anyone, but like the 5-year-old kid who just before was cowering in the corner, not wanting to fight, then you know that you've screwed up and you'd better get away as fast as you can because something probably really dramatic is going to happen because you did that.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. That's something really to take into consider, and that does happen. That it does check out. But speaking about how he's one of the nice ones, what makes Gohan so likable? I've always seen Gohan as a very agreeable character. He's way more thoughtful than his father, and he is really respectable. He respects discipline, and he usually toes the line, but sometimes he does, venture out with his father. He does. Yeah, he's a kid. Kids rebel, but for the most part, he did his homework, did what he was told. He was a good egg, and he still is. He knows about good manners, and he just thinks of others, whereas Goku doesn't.
He's essentially, well, okay, this is going to sound a bit bad, but he's like a lot more down to earth than a lot of the other characters. And yes, maybe it's because he's half human, he's down to earth. It's a great joke. I just made a joke and I wasn't trying to. But I think that it's like he's much more down to earth. He feels like a lot more like not just like a real person, but also like a real child, like what a real child would be like in that kind of situation. And I think it also made him very relatable, especially to the people who were watching who were children at the time. So I think that is partially why he's just appealed to so many characters, to so many people.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And because that's why Pokemon Ash has never grown up. But it's just because he identifies with the target market. And at the time, there were young boys reading Dragonball. And now that Goku is an adult, they needed another child, so bring in Gohan. And it sort of worked. One thing I noticed that as Gohan gets older, he actually becomes quite eccentric. And obviously with the Great Saiyan Man, just being a complete doofus, but one of those lovable doofuses. I'll never forget the scene in movie 12. Hell's been let loose, Frieza and the Ginyu Force and all these past enemies have just, traversed into Earth. And Gohan's there, and he's just like, he just does the poses, and he's just like, I'm gonna defeat you, Frieza, I am Son Gohan! And then Vidal's just in the background, just going, oh my god, Gohan, you're so cool! I'm thinking, oh, you are just adorable.
He's just a dork. He's a massive dork, and it is absolutely adorable just seeing him, at least, like, 16, 18, however old you want him to say he is in the Buu Saga, like high school Gohan, like managing to kind of trying to fit into high school and then also trying to be a superhero, and it is very, very cute just seeing him like in this situation, and also, like, I mean, he's still really strong. He's not, even though he's not as strong as he used to be because he hadn't been training, he's still like one of the strongest people on the entire universe, and yet he's still a massive dork, and I just find that so fun.
I know, and even though for people who are going, oh hey, Gohan's not as strong anymore, eventually he does figure with Ultimate Gohan further down the line, he does like kind of catch up. It's just part of the cycle really, and I think it ultimately just became one of his undoings. And speaking of that, what would you say are his particular flaws?
I mean, well, I think Gohan's flaw, like his fatal flaw as a fighter in particular, I think, is that he's not a fighter at heart. Fighting is something he does because if like people are in danger, or just because like he thinks it's the right thing to do, but it's not something he enjoys so much that he's going to do it in his free time, which means he's not going to train in times of peace, which means if there's like a very long period where nothing is happening, he's probably not going to train, and he probably won't be as strong as you'd expect, say, Goku to be at that given moment.
Yeah, now that is actually quite right, because we've seen that happen twice. The 7-year period between Cell and Buu, and then the 10-year period, well, now that we got Super, but the 4-year period between the Buu Saga and
the three
Beerus.
question mark, the question mark period, because we still don't actually know, but...
Yeah, I mean, I personally go, because they sort of retconned that with the Battle of Gods movie, and then when we got to the Battle of Gods arc in Super, as far as I can tell, I think it's been 4 years since the Buu Saga, and we're now in age 780, because this is when Bra's about to be born, and according to the original Daisenshu's, Bra is born in age 780. So we are sticking to the law, and we're about 4 years away from the end of Z. But I think the only real time where there's been a vaguely significant time skip that Gohan has been training is the 3 years between Trunks arriving and warning about the androids and the androids actually showing up. Those are the only times where Gohan has actually been doing a decent amount of training in a time skip, because he needed to.
Yeah, and that's only because they know that the androids are coming in 3 years, so obviously Gohan is going to train for that. He's not going to train for that. They did say the androids were going to kill them all, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, but you are quite right in saying that in terms of long fits of peace, then, there will be, no need for Gohan to fight. One thing I will say in terms of a flaw is that he can be a little bit dithering when it comes to important decisions. And many in times of the show, there have been moments which we now colloquially use in DBZA. It's the dodge factor. He does rely on other people in the fight to help him. But it does stem from the fact of what you said. He is not a fighter at heart. He can fight, and he is really strong, but that's not his main reason for living.
No, and not to mention in terms of relying on other people, sometimes I almost wonder if it's because Gohan just doesn't particularly have very much self-confidence. Like, with in like the Cell games, after he gets his arm injured, and then he thinks he's going to give up, and he needs Goku to basically tell him to believe in himself, because he doesn't seem like he can do that on his own. And I mean, that makes sense because he was like 10, 11, 9. But, I do wonder how much of that he still sort of has. Like, even when he's in the newest episode in Super, there's still parts where you just think, he's not completely in control and completely sure of himself in every situation. He doesn't always know if he's strong enough.
Yeah, but in a way, I think it's almost good to have that little bit of self-doubt. It means that you have to try hard, because if you just knew that you were strong and awesome all the time, then you wouldn't know really where to progress. So in a way, that's kind of one of the advantages of being a half Saiyan, is in like you have a sense of humility and modesty and a sense that you can do better. And I think probably one of those things that I always hear whenever I do a project, and I think Gohan will probably be the same thing, is that the 6 words that make you cringe but also agree is, I know you can do better.
I just cringed just hearing that. I just cringed.
No, because you know that you don't want to hear it, but then you just go, oh, damn it, you're right. Going on to like the post-cell things, and I talked about this in a couple of videos where Toriyama was getting burnt out making the Dragon Ball manga. And even in the Frieza arc, he was kind of going, I don't really know how I can top the fight between Goku and Frieza. How do I do it? And then eventually, the editors at the time, the anime was still going, so they were kind of going, yeah, this anime's doing really well, we need to make more. So he had a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and it just made it suffer. He kept going through loads of micromanagement during the Artificial Humans arc. We know all the story about androids 19 and 20 were being meant to be the original enemies, and we had 17 and 18. They didn't like that. Then Cell's first form, they didn't like that. Second form, they really didn't like that one. We got Perfect Cell, they did like that. And then at the end of this, Toriyama was like, right, I am done. If I have to make more, then I am just going to do whatever the hell I want. So you see that in the Buu saga. It's a lot weirder because he said that, the Gotenks, Great Saiyaman, they're all his doing. And you can see that. It all stems back from the reason why Z is called, Z. Dragon Ball Z was meant to be a sense of finality. Toriyama says, I like the letter Z because it sounds final. Hint, hint.
It's the best stroke of all time. Dragon Ball Z was supposed to be the end of the series. Whoops.
Yeah. Oh dear. If it had been less popular, then maybe. But even though that the 7 years of peace have made him a little bit of soft, as said by Vegeta, he does still have moments where he is really still very strong. And he does get a little bit of traction when he's training with the Kais. And yeah, even though it's a bit unorthodox of training, it's still something. And, what would you say that was a Toriyama, trying again with Gohan?
That's definitely what it felt like to me. Especially there are some points early on, like when Gohan gets seemingly killed by Majin Buu, only for Kaioshin to go and save him. Sorry, Supreme Kai, whatever. Kaioshin, Supreme Kai, whatever you say. For him to save him in the last minute. And then he's going, when Kibito heals him, and he's going all on about Gohan is our last hope. His power is really something, and if we could use it, he could probably beat Buu. And we just need to get him to have that sword. He just needs to get stronger. He's totally gonna do it, guys. And so it almost kind of feels like, I don't know if it was actually true or not, but it does almost feel like when he's doing those parts where he's training, it feels like it is sort of building him up again so that he's eventually going to face Buu in the final showdown in the same way that Goku would have to train to face Frieza and Nappa and Vegeta in the final showdown, and that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, I felt like that, because I think loads of people, when they were hyping it up, is, especially with Gohan going oh my god, he broke the Z-Sword, he must be really strong, they're really hyping it up. And everyone was really getting excited with the Potara thing, saying, oh my god, we're seeing Goku and Gohan fuse. How about that? That would have been so poetic. Father and son joining forces, literally.
See, if there was any moment where Toriyama kind of felt like, okay, maybe this isn't really a good idea, I don't think I'm going to make Gohan, finish the job, I feel like if it really was going to happen, it wasn't necessarily when Goku shows up with the Potara, it was before that when they decided for Goku to show up in the first place, along with Vegeta, as well as all that stuff with the Potara. It's at that point, when Majin Buu absorbs Gotenks and he starts beating up on Gohan, at that point it feels like, okay, I think we just got through a major shift in the story. I think what we were expecting to happen isn't happening anymore. And maybe that was Toriyama's plan all along, but it could have also just been him changing his mind that Gohan just isn't working as a main character. We need to bring Goku back.
Toriyama does right by the seat of his pants, so it probably was a last-minute change based on his back catalogue.
Yeah, I mean, he said, there have been some translations where he said, I think it's Daidenshu 2, where he says, listen, I tried to make Gohan the main character, and by that he means, from the Cell Saga onwards, you can definitely see that, with it just focuses on him after that for a very long time, but then he says, ultimately, it didn't work. I felt like, compared to Goku, he wasn't suitable for the part. That's all the comments we really have about it, and I don't really know exactly what the greater details were, but it is essentially clearly says he tried to make Gohan the main character. He decided it didn't work. That's why Goku is the main character now, and that's why the story ended up the way it did.
And of course, that's why we got a power. That whole intro was Gohan and, all the other characters, but Gohan was front and center.
And the ending as well, and We Were Angels as well, it very heavily focuses Gohan, and it does definitely seem like, yeah, because the story was suddenly shifting to a new main character, they needed to have a new opening and a new ending. I also really like them, so it's really fun. I do enjoy that brief period of the series where Gohan was the main character, even if it didn't end up lasting, because I do find it really enjoyable in my own right. I really like the Great Saiyaman and all that kind of stuff. Not as much of a fan of like Ultimate Gohan, mostly just I don't really find him as interesting, but I do really like that part of the story. I do find it really interesting, even if it didn't mean a lot of things in the end.
Whenever I see Great Saiyaman, I always just feel like, oh boy, Kale Bear is going to have a very fun time.
Oh, no, definitely. No, he's just, the Great Saiyaman is just so fun, especially because like Gohan and Kale Bear and Masako Nozawa, and you just feel like he has so much energy, like he's just so excited every time he does this kind of stuff. Like, you know, earlier on in the series, he was always just in these life and death scenarios, and he was always like cowering around and having to fight for his life. But here he's like, he's being a superhero, and he's having the time of his life, and you can't help but get caught up in it. He, unlike Goku and Vegeta, who just kind of fight for the sake of their own pride and self-improvement, Gohan is one of those characters who does fight because he has a sense of moral judgment and he thinks it's the right thing to do. And I think that's why it's almost like the Great Saiyaman kind of just makes sense. It makes sense for him to be a superhero because that's kind of what he was like.
And speaking of super...
Oh, topical segue.
Going into that, and no, seriously, we are both Gohan fans here, and yeah, I can seriously attest to that. And so many people in the comments saying, oh my god, you look like Gohan when you're wearing a jumper. And I'm thinking, yeah, I get that, alright. The Toei's handling of Gohan in Super, I would say one of Gohan's lowest ebbs ever came in the Resurrection F arc. In the movie, it wasn't as pronounced. It didn't feel as, oh my god, I can't watch this is terrible. Not in like terrible as the quality, but just in terms of feeling bad for Gohan. It was just the lowest point. But in the Super arc, Gohan was drawn very, very sickly. He looked very thin. And I don't know whether that was an animation quirk or whether that was intentional. I feel like
might have been an animation quirk. The
animation quirk is Toei. Yep, okay, I agree.
Like, especially during that part of the section, there's actually been a lot of sort of looks into this, that it was being kind of outsourced to a lot of people and they really wanted to get it done. And Gohan and Resurrection F, I actually have to kind of somewhat disagree with you there, Masako, because I actually really... Gohan in Resurrection F the movie, I don't really have an opinion on, but I actually kind of enjoy him in the arc. Mostly just because, okay, Gohan in the Resurrection F arc, he's just weaker. He's skinnier. For reasons, inexplicable reasons. Not only is he just weaker, but he's lost Ultimate and he's lost Super Saiyan 2 as well, seemingly, and it's really weird. But what I do like in the arc is that they kind of have Gohan say that he's not really satisfied with that idea and be like, oh god, I just realized if I am too weak, I won't be able to protect anyone and people are going to die because I'm not strong enough. Like, I think everyone forgets about it because the Resurrection F arc, everyone forgets about it, but do you guys remember Piccolo sacrificed himself to save Gohan? And then Gohan beats himself up over it?
Oh, no, absolutely. This was the point where he just realized, and the fact that he was just getting pot-shot by Frieza, but he did do the heroic moment where he just basically went all out and he managed to contact Goku to bring them back. So that means they could then finish it off. So he did sacrifice himself in a way. The problem with, it's not about the character. And again, as I said in my videos, it's not about the character, it's about the way he's written. And I felt like there's been at least 3 times in Super where they built it. Oh yeah, Gohan's coming back. Oh no, he's not. Okay, stand down. I think it would be, the first moment was at the end of the Resurrection F arc where he does actually go to Piccolo. I really want to train, and he said, I need to get stronger. You think, oh my god, this could be something really good. Because this was like, we were getting into the territory where, okay, the content of the movies is now gone. We are now getting into Super as Super, not as a really lazy rehash of the 2 movies. Then another one was when training for the Universe 6 arc, Gohan was sort of considered, but he just said, oh, I've got another conference, I'm sorry.
It was mentioned in the manga first, a long time before the anime even aired, and it was just like a throwaway line. It was like, oh, where's Gohan? He's just at the conference. They didn't even consider like the idea. Well, they kind of considered him joining, but they didn't really think about it too much, and they definitely didn't mention that he'd been training and he actually wanted to join in the first place. So Toei kind of inevitably sort of made the situation a bit worse by kind of hyping stuff up, but then not changing anything really at all, except for how they drew his hair.
Yeah, oh god. And the trouble is, though, with those animation inconsistencies, it gets people so hyped. There's loads of episodes. There's episode 61 or 2 where Gohan looks shocked. Everyone was going like, oh my god, what does this mean? Does that mean he's going to go to the future and help fight with them? No, that's not what happened. Episode 67. He looks pretty much like Ultimate Gohan. Is he now Ultimate Gohan? That quiff of the hair. Oh my god, it's the Buu Saga all over again. And it's guys, calm down.
Like I said, Toei really exasperated the situation. I don't think they realized what they were getting themselves into by hyping up an idea of Gohan coming. You think they were purposely trying to troll people for kind of literally an entire year?
Oh, I think they were, because Toei has been known, especially now, to hype things up. That episode 66 preview.
Oh god.
Or 63. There have been many previews which have just hyped. Yeah, exactly. They hype it up, and then it just underdelivers, and it doesn't matter. I think one of the biggest ones was when we thought we'd actually get to see Baby Bra, or no, Bra as a kid.
Oh, that was
the thing.
Oh, that was the most, like, oh my god, Toei, why would you do that?
That was the worst. In the fact there was no sepia tone, so we didn't see it as a flashback.
They did it on purpose, or they just hadn't decided to put sepia tone flashback in when they were coming up with the next episode preview. But still,
well, that was just hilarious. But we're going into the universe survival arc, and sure enough, Gohan's back, looking like he just came from a Buu Saga reunion.
He doesn't have the hair bang.
Well, no, not the hair bang, but he's in the gi, and he's got the eye outline the way it is, and yeah, he looks like he's ready to go. And the first reaction I had, and I think lots of people had, was like, oh yeah, Toei, oh yeah, Gohan's gonna fight, yeah, right. Oh, but then there were other people going, oh my god, he's actually looking like he's gonna fight. It was a very mixed bag there. It wasn't the immediate, oh, welcome back, Gohan. People have been burnt.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my reaction was like, oh, well, we're actually doing this now? Okay, I didn't think that was ever going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see it is that the Universe Survival Arc is a crucial arc for Super. Is if this doesn't work, then I don't know what will. Because this is meant to be fights across the universe gets destroyed, and if this doesn't excite people and just gets a resounding meh, it's going to be very hard for Super to gain any more traction. And I think it could potentially be, then brought to a conclusion. The one thing I will say is that the first 4 episodes that we've seen have actually been pretty good.
I know, I've definitely been enjoying them so far. It does feel like there's been a very different style of writing, at least in this Universe Survival arc, than even the Future Trunks arc, and I am very curious as to what it's going to lead to.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing I noticed, and I heard this on one of the Kanzenshu podcasts recently, is that Super is now on its 5th animation director, and this is after 80 episodes. And you look at One Piece, have had maybe 8 in 700 episodes.
Oh yeah, it's because Super is internal production issues. I mean, after all, the fact is, if it did have a very consistent team behind it that knew what it was doing at all times, obviously we wouldn't have all these weird animation inconsistencies we kept talking about as to Gohan's hairstyle. Like that, it's kind of obvious.
Hopefully, if the Universe Survival Arc does really well, they'll keep this team and then build on it. In terms of building, how do you think they're building Gohan in this arc so far?
Well, it's somewhat hard to tell, given we've only really seen 2 kind of important bits of information from him. Like, one is that he wants to fight because he realizes he's got stuff that he wants to protect, in his universe, that is obviously the entire universe, and also specifically Videl and Pan. And then also, I guess, the idea that, even in the fight with Lavender, like, even if he's, like, maybe if he is stronger than he was back Resurrection F, whereas it was his lowest point of him beating himself up, even then he still kind of wants to get stronger. He's still not really satisfied with where he is right now. So, you could say that perhaps they are building something up to him. Also, I'm kind of, at this point, just judging by how the Future Trunks arc worked, I'm also maybe expecting he might get some kind of temporary power-up at some point, some kind of epic moment in his own right where they can just kind of be like, hey guys, Gohan's doing something cool again, love us, please. I'm not expecting him to become the main character or anything ridiculous. If they do give this big moment for him, I hope that it kind of makes sense, and I hope it's not that like pandering to the fans and it actually makes sense for his character and they actually explore who his character is a bit more. Ever since the Boo saga, his character's been just suffering from a clear lack of direction because no one knows what they want to do with him. Super itself has also been the same way, and I hope that in this arc, now that he's there, he's on the poster, it's pretty much as close as you can get to say he is in the arc, he's important, so I hope they do explore this. I hope they kind of give some kind of finality to his character, something that kind of makes sense in the long run.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think the way I've seen it is that what I would love to see for Gohan is to him actually striking a balance between fighting and family, and I think he's starting to get that now, because when he's recruited for the exhibition match, he actually looks back to Videl and says, I have something to fight for. I like that. This is more like it. He's got a reason, he's got a purpose, and he can now actually get a sense of equilibrium, and he can actually round himself out as a character. And going on, actually, I think a lot of people were reacting to episode 80, which is just, as of this recording, just came out. I would probably say that fight was probably the best that we could have hoped for. Because if that had been just an easy win for Gohan, it would have been like, there would have been, of course, everyone going, oh my god, Gohan won, that's so great. Yeah, there would have been that. There would have been that momentary glimpse of elation, but then it would just been like, oh, well, he didn't really kind of thing. But then again, at the same time, people were like, I'll take that, whatever. And if he'd had lost, like outright, then you'd just be like, oh god, I hope this isn't at their end, or you'd be just clinging on to hope, saying this better be like coming up with a tour de force.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this is going to be Gohan's tour de force. But no, he actually, not only did he, I think he won really, because he did stand up, but it ended up as a draw, which actually wasn't that bad. Yeah, he used his smarts, he used his talents to actually outsmart his opponent, and he used his Saiyan tenacity to fight through the pain. But Gohan is probably one of the smartest characters in the entire show, rivaling Bulma. And if you ever look into the lore of Dragon Ball Online, it's just confirmed, because Gohan is the one to actually write a book about Ki and flying and all that sort of thing, and it becomes popularized. He's the one that brings the world of Dragon Ball to the masses. And we don't see that in the show, and we probably will never see that in the show. But it is part of the supposed canon. So Gohan has still got a lot of impacts left to make on the show. This leads on to a good topic, and this is one that I think is quite subjective. Our favorite Gohan moments. What would you say, Gabby, is your favorite Gohan moment in the entire show?
Besides the obvious, like, him going Super Saiyan 2 and stuff, I think actually one of my favorite Gohan moments, it is small and is oftentimes very overlooked, but I think it is actually one of the most interesting things in the entire franchise. That is when Gohan is he's just started fighting Cell. He gets hit once, he goes up and he recovers, and he walks up to Cell, and then he starts pleading with Cell to stop fighting because he's decided that this entire fight is just meaningless and they don't need to keep fighting. They can just stop. I just find that so interesting. I don't think there is any other example in the entire franchise where one character tries to stop one of these fights before it actually happens because they've just realized just how meaningless it is.
That's actually really good. And this is the whole point of when I ask people their favorite moments. It's all very well and good if it's a moment that we all know, but if it's one of those really obscure moments, that's even better. And I'd probably say that it's around the same time that my favorite one is. It's the whole time that Gohan's in the chamber with Goku. Just that was that great moment, that simulated year where they are just bonding at a time where you think that we don't never really see them bond on screen, whereas here they actually are. And Gohan actually seems genuinely happy. He just seems to be really, like, getting to know his father for once.
Oh, and I love that moment as well, especially because it's the thing I was talking before about how like Gohan sometimes feels like he doesn't have as much self-confidence. And in the anime filler especially, they have all these moments, he's trying to go Super Saiyan and he's like, oh no, I can't do it, it's too hard. And then Goku's always there reassuring him, being like, no, Gohan, I know you can do it. You've just got to believe in yourself, kind of thing. I know you can do this. You can totally do this. You've done it before. You've done it in another timeline. So just don't give up yet. And he does it, and eventually he gets Super Saiyan. He gets Super Saiyan 2 eventually, and through all that hard work, he ends up saving the world, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Goku's plan didn't take into equation the fact that he didn't actually ask Gohan. He just was like, Piccolo's the one to go like, do you have any idea what he's thinking right now? He is petrified. And it's just basically Goku going, oh no. Oh, I didn't actually ask. Oh no.
But he does kind of make up for it in his own way. So I'll let this one slide, Goku.
It was part of the story. Anyway, I think this leads on to a really good conclusion. And I'd say that Gohan's place has been in flux for years, but I think we're now really beginning to see the flickers of clarity in his character. He's finding that balance between fighting and family. I think by the time we get to the end of Super, or if it does end at Z, we'll just see that Gohan that we saw at the end of Z. You don't really see him, but he seems like completely at peace.
I think that makes sense. Like, the fact is, and honestly, I think the reason why I feel like Gohan's character is still really interesting to explore in Super is because, his character in the epilogue, he's perfectly satisfied with his life. He's got a family, he's a scholar, he's doing everything he always wanted to do, and also at the end of the story, the world is in peace, so he doesn't have to fight. It's so satisfying, but it's also very clear, material for the end game, when it's the end of the story. It's not the end of the story right now. The story is still going, so I do feel like Gohan does need to sort of have this sort of understanding as to, what his character has been like since the end of Majin Buu, since the moment he dropped that Patara earring and then got absorbed. It's always just kind of moments being like, what is Gohan? What is his character? What is his place in this franchise? Even GT itself didn't really know what to do, and it's kind of like, it's probably why he's just such a non-issue in that series. So I do hope they kind of actually explore his character in depth and really sort of try to explain what exactly he is in this franchise. I feel like that is what would make Gohan an interesting character, something that everyone would find, would actually start rooting for him again.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I just think that just finding that, raison d'etre would be actually really, really good. And I think that pretty much just wraps things up, really. Thank you so much, Gabby, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for having me. Like I said, it's pretty great.
Yeah, so the one last thing to say is that, have you got anything to plug, your social medias?
I mean, I've got that YouTube channel. I also have Twitter, also got a Tumblr blog. Sometimes I post stuff, just random thoughts. I don't know, mostly just my YouTube channel. That's the main important thing, so.
Alrighty, cool. So now this is the point of the conversation that I turn it to you, the audience. What do you guys think? Do you think Gohan's character has potential in Super? And what was your favorite Gohan moment? Leave a comment below and let's get the conversation going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to subscribe to MozillaVulpix too. So until the next one, guys, catch you later.
See ya.